Hello all of you beautiful people around the world, my name is Ryan aka Blackbeard TCG, and in today's video we will be talking about Little Zoro Beatdown, the meta warping deck. Now I just have to get this disclaimer out of the way. Please remember, this is all my opinion. That's all it is, it's just my opinion. Please take it with a grain of salt. This is just my thoughts after playing a ton of the set 2 metagame, as well as observing some of the top players in Asia events. I'm sure you guys have seen gameplay as well. This is just my observations, my opinions, and the purpose of this video is to create discussion. Whether you agree with me or not, let's talk about it and let me know in the comments below. So how does this deck play? Well, go ahead and click the card in the top right if you want more of an in-depth look on the winning deck, as well as the construction of it and all that stuff. I went into detail on that in the previous video, but this deck has insane pressure that puts your opponent on the back burner right away. From turn 2, your opponent is going to start swinging. The Zoro players are going to start swinging, and they will be coming fast and furious, dropping one drop cards like Sunny-kun, Nami to search, be able to pull Zoro, be able to pull Nico Robin in order to pop block. Have things like Curly Dedan as well as Nami to double search, so it's very consistent. So when you have very consistent decks, as well as decks that put on insane pressure being aggro, and then of course a best of 1 format, you have a deck that's going to be very strong. Again, if you want me to go more in depth, check out my previous video. Now, the insane thing about this deck now is that they are running 4 copies of Whitebeard to give you that late game reassurance. So if anything happens, you always have that Blackbeard, which will then make your Zoro a 7k beat stick. And then it's going to be really tough, because once you get to that point of the game, if you're trying to swing at Zoro for that one turn, he's going to have that boost, so you won't actually be able to swing into him without using a ton of Dawn. But then you invest that Dawn in order to swing at him, and then when the turn comes back to him, now he can hit you because you have less Dawn. Yeah, it's not fun. Whitebeard definitely opens up a ton of late game plays, and so Zoro is just strong at all points of the game. Let's talk about Makino. In my opinion, this is probably the most broken uncommon in the entire game. Of course, you could say like Curly Dedan, which is also uncommon. You have Otama, who's also uncommon. So you can make arguments for that. But Makino is what makes this deck absurd, right? Of course, you have the power of double blockers, but it's a 2k counter. So even if you don't need to use it for offense, it has a 2k counter on defense. It's searchable because you could search it off your bandit, off Curly Dedan. It's low cost, it's only 1 cost, so you're able to almost always play this no matter what the situation is. It allows 4k beaters because obviously Zoro gives you plus 1,000, Makino giving one of your characters plus 3,000, so plus 4,000 for a swing is absolutely absurd. I don't think there's anything else in the game right now that will give you that much of a boost. I don't think so. So yeah, plus 3,000, absolutely insane. Combo that with Zoro, plus 4,000, and then you can run pseudo 6 copies. What do I mean by that? Well, if you look at the build, this person is running double Yuta, right? The championship deck was running double Yuta, and Yuta can go ahead and pull any card that has a cost of 3 or less from your trash back up to your hand. So guess what? If you had to use your Makino to counter because you were in a tough spot, well, guess what? You could now use your Yuta and pull it back up and then play it and then pop off, right? You have that option. You can use Yuta to go ahead and pull your Rush Zoro and then try to swing for game, right? You can go ahead and search for your Vista in order to pop a blocker because Vista is a 3-drop. This card has perfect synergy. It's an offensive threat right away because once it hits the board, you're able to get any of your other cards from your trash, as I just discussed. But with Zoro, it becomes 5,000 power, so it can start swinging. This deck is absolutely absurd. So we talked about how does this deck play, why it's so strong. So let's talk about the decks that stand a chance. What do I think is going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks as the events go on, as people continue testing? Are a lot of people just gonna all switch to Zoro? Will Zoro become a tier 0 deck? I don't know. He definitely can. I could see it happening, but we do still have cards that have tools and decks that need to be explored. And I really want to see if our friends over in Japan, in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, everybody that has access to the cards right now in the Asia region for OP02, I'm very interested to see how they deal with Zoro. So right off the bat, there's two decks that I want to talk about, Ivankov as well as Doflamingo, specifically blue. So Ivankov being in blue has access to a ton of blockers, same thing with Doflamingo, and you're going to see these builds running, I don't know how many blockers now. I could see decks running between like 9 to 15 blockers if they really wanted. I would say maybe somewhere in the middle, maybe like 12, maybe 12. 15 is kind of excessive, right? But basically what I'm saying is blue has a ton of blockers, and in any deck, whenever you're dealing with aggression in any card game, if you have blockers, that's going to stop aggro, right? So I think that because blue has access to all of those tools, that automatically is going to make Ivankov and Doflamingo decks that you have to worry about. Now, of course, there's going to be early lethal setups with Ivankov 7-drop being played, being able to drop the 6-drop Luffy, who will then be able to spin a card back up to the opponent's hand, but then also have double attack, can be really strong because with this Zoro build, your only rush tool is your Zoro, right? That's literally your only rush tool. So if you're able to spin back one of your opponent's other characters, then that will make it so that they have summoning sickness and they can't swing on you on the following turn. So that gives you a little bit more of a defensive out. And then of course with that Luffy, you're going to have access to double attack as well. So you can have early lethal setups, and then you can actually deal with Whitebeard in the late game as well, right? Whitebeard is a pretty tanky boy, but when you have things like Ivankov, when you have things like Crocodile, you have things like Luffy who have 7,000 power. Some Ivankov builds are also playing what's his name? Dracula Mihawk, who is 9,000 power, right? So you have cards that are going to be able to deal with that threat once you get to the end game. The only thing is, it is really hard to play Mihawk, especially into Zoro, because at that stage of the game, if you play Mihawk, you're investing 9 Dawn, meaning you only have 1 more Dawn to play with, and it becomes very, very risky at that point. And if you're not getting really good value off that Mihawk, and if that Mihawk can't really close out the game within the next turn, well then Zoro is going to be able to go into his turn only worrying about you having 1 Dawn. So you better have a bunch of blockers, or sorry, you better have a bunch of counters in your hand, but oh wait, you're playing a Ivankov, so maybe you only have 2. It gets a little bit dicey, so you're probably going to want to KO it with some of the other cards that I mentioned earlier. But again, you can run the oh my god, I do this all in one take, I'm sorry. I don't know why it's slipping my mind. Dracula Mihawk, you can decide to run the 9-drop Dracula Mihawk, and in fact I highly recommend that you do, because it is probably going to give you the best chance to win overall. Then of course with Doflamingo, same thing that I mentioned for the range of blockers, you have access to that, but he can also flood the board, right? You're able to play a ton of your 7 warlords just by attacking. You're always going to attach 2 Dawn, you're always going to swing and proc its ability, so now you'll be also be able to have a ton of cards on board. You'll be able to swing into Zoro's cards, or Zoro will have to swing into your cards, and thus your Doflamingo will stay nice and healthy. So I could definitely see a refined version of this deck being something that can go up against Zoro in terms of matching aggression, but then also having access to a ton of blockers. So you could slow the game down or you can speed it up. There's 2 cards that I want to talk about as well that blue has access to. So Moji as well as 1-cost Doflamingo, 2 cards that are in OP02. Now why Moji? You look at him and he's just 3,000 power 1-drop. Well, he's a 1-cost to match pressure. This is something that you could play early, it's something that you could play late, and it's going to have enough power to deal with a lot of the 1-cost threats. If you look at the other 1-cost threats that are in this deck, they are going to have 3,000 power or less, right? So because of that, you are going to be able to swing on them back when it's your turn, because those boosts are only on your opponent's turn. So when it comes back to your turn, now your Moji can go ahead and take care of them, and it's only 1 cost. So it allows you to have a little bit more offense in the early game and something to kind of deal with towards the late game. So I could definitely see this being used. It also has counter as well. Don't sleep on Moji. I would not be surprised if Moji starts seeing play in blue decks specifically for the Zoro matchup. Then I want to talk about the new 1-cost Doflamingo. At first, when I looked at this card, I wasn't too big of a fan, because I was like, it's a 1-cost that basically does what the 3-cost one does, but it has no counter. And then the fact that you have to trash 1 card from your hand to place one of your opponent's characters of the cost of 1 or less to the bottom of the deck, I was like, what is the value in this card? But I see insane value in this card now because of Makino. I already talked about how broken I think this card is, and being able to spin it back to the bottom of your opponent's deck is going to be huge. You attach 1 Dawn to this card, so it's 3,000, so you can go ahead and swing at any of the other 1-drop and then go ahead and flip that Makino back to the bottom of your opponent's deck. If they went ahead and used Dedan to search for it as well, then they basically got no value out of it except for maybe that 1 swing that hopefully you were able to block. I think that this is really good. Spinning Makino, spinning Sunny is going to be really good, but then also it sets up your future plays, which is also really good for Ivankov and Dofi, so you can stack your decks. That can allow you to make sure that you get your 7-drop Ivankov into 6-drop Luffy combo. That can allow you to stack your deck so you're able to get your 2k counters for your 4-cost Mihawk or anything like that. It's just a very versatile card, and these are 2 cards that I could definitely see being played in blue. Lastly, I want to talk about Whitebeard for red. So the reason why I think Whitebeard could be a character that could counter Zoro as well is because it has 6,000 base power, making it more difficult to swing into. And if the game gets to turn 5, it has the potential to take over, but he is high risk, high reward, because if Zoro decks start to play a lot more Luffy, unblockable Luffy, and then your Edward Newgate takes a hit, then things will get very, very dicey. You definitely don't want to take hits early with Edward Newgate, because you are going to be self-harming every turn. So what is the strategy? In my opinion, I think that you want to play for your Moby Dick Power Spike. This is a card that can make you play Zoro's game. If you guys don't know what Moby Dick does, if you have 1 or less life cards, your Edward Newgate and all of your characters with Whitebeard Pirates and its type get plus 2,000 power. Yes, so that means Whitebeard Pirates as well as Whitebeard subordinates. As long as it has Whitebeard in its type, it will get 2,000 power. This is very strong. Think about it. Zoro's strong because you invest 1 Dawn and all of your characters get 1,000 power. Moby Dick will allow all of your Whitebeard pirates to get 2,000 power. But of course, you have to be at 1 or less life, so it's going to be very, very risky. But of course, at that point of the game, hopefully you also have your Whitebeard on turn 5 that you can play. You're going to be really healthy. You have Moby Dick, which is going to make your Whitebeard 8k. I honestly could see this being a deck that we could see a lot more play out of to specifically combat against Zoro, but then again, I could also see Zoro's start to spec in things like Diablo Jump as well as the 5-cost Luffy, and then Edward Newgate gets hit early, and then yeah, so goes that strategy. Yeah, Zoro is a very, very strong deck. So Whitebeard has blockers, it has reoccurring blockers, right? You have Diamond Jozu, of course you have Marco the Phoenix as a reoccurring blocker, so you have access to all that. You have access to Nico, Robin, and Vista in order to pop those little boys and little girls, of course. And then, of course, you have low-cost units that you can play as well. The name of the card is slipping my mind, but I believe there's a 1-cost unit that I think some Zoro decks are also playing. But Whitebeard decks can play it because obviously it has Whitebeard in its type. And obviously it can get pumped up by Moby Dick as well as any of the other Whitebeard cards that give it steroids, so it can be very strong. And then it can attack active cards, so if they're just sitting on a Makino and just like waiting in order to use it, then you can go ahead and swing into that and get it off the board. So yeah, Whitebeard has some pretty good tools. Will it be optimal? I don't know. I'm excited to see. So is Zoro healthy for the game? It's too early to tell. If you were to ask me, I would say it's probably not. You have to put a lot of effort into facing Zoro. And by that I mean, you really have to think about dealing with their board or trying to play his game and go for life. But if not, then he's probably just going to outplay you or outpace you, I mean, if you're trying to play his game by just going for life, right? Because the deck is so good. And then at that point, it's just like, okay, why don't I just play the mirror, right? Like, why would I play any other deck and play Zoro's playstyle if I could just play the mirror match? And then, again, that makes it tier 0 if everybody's just playing the same deck, right? So that's why, like I said, it's too early to tell. Do I think it's healthy? We'll have to see. But right now, I would say it's a little bit worrisome because it is a very strong deck, but it is not undefeated. I don't want to say that it is straight up a tier 0 deck because the deck is strong, but we do have the counters. I talked about some of the cards that can be used in terms of consistency. I don't know, but I do think that there are things that need to be explored. And as things get explored, as more tournaments go on, I'm very, very sure that we are going to see other decks that pop up that will just beat this and then it will be a thing of the past. But people need to play test. We need to figure it out. For now, it's very strong, but people will deal with it, 100%. We've seen this happen all throughout OP01. Even in OP02 already, we've seen it. Going from Kinemon to Ivankov to now Zoro. I'm sure there'll be something else that comes up that will take Zoro's throne, but he's looking very, very strong. So just to wrap it up, I want to say thank you so much, everybody. We have hit 1,000 subscribers. I love you all. Thank you so, so much. I'm going to have my first live stream next week, so stay tuned for more information on that. And then I will be giving away one super pre-release deck. Stay tuned. I'm going to have all that information coming up next week. Thank you so much, guys. We're at 1,000 subscribers, and I'm going to continue to keep making banger content for y'all. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe, share it with a friend. Become my Nakama, man. Hit that subscribe button, join the Saviors of Beck, and I'm out. Peace.